Okay, let's talk through all the steps for how to find the limit as x approaches 0 of this function. You'll notice in this function that we have a square root. That kind of stands out to me. It's only in our numerator though. So to get started on any of these limits as x approaches a value, what we want to do first is evaluate the function at that value of x. So in our case, we're going to have the square root of 6 times 0 plus 49 with a minus 7 hanging out here and a 0 in our denominator. Well, this will simplify a little bit that 6 times 0 makes 0 plus 49. We're really looking at the square root of 49 with a minus 7 in the numerator, which is really 7 minus 7 over 0, or when simplified, we get to 0 over 0. All right, so because we got to 0 over 0, what that tells us is we can continue going with this problem. And to continue, we kind of start back from the beginning and say to ourselves, well, we should be able to do a little bit of simplifying and eventually get to a number. So to do so, because we have a square root in our numerator, what we'd like to do is focus on that and multiply by the conjugate of that numerator. All right, so the conjugate is going to include the exact same two terms. It's going to include a square root and 6x plus 49. And the 7, we're going to use that in both the numerator and denominator. However, the conjugate, what you do is, because this was a subtraction for our numerator, we're going to make this an addition for its conjugate, multiplying both numerator and denominator by the same thing. From here, let's take a little bit of time and multiply this out. So we still have the limit as x approaches 0. That's going to continue on. And I'm going to have to extend this even further than where we are here so that we can see exactly how this multiplies out. So to do so, what I'm going to do is use FOIL, this nice acronym that reminds us what we're multiplying together. So first, outer, inner, last. Our first terms, I'm going to say, are the square root of 6x plus 49 multiplied by the first term in that second numerator. So that's going to get us to the square root of 6x plus 49. And we multiplied two copies together, so we can say that that's squared. However, if we want to think about simplifying that down a little bit, because we're squaring a square root, we can think of those as inverse operations of one another. So these are going to reduce down. Squaring a square root are opposite, so we're just going to be left with the 6x plus 49 from underneath. Next, let's multiply the outer terms together. So the outer terms, I'm thinking the square root of 6x plus 49 multiplied by the 7, which will be plus 7 times the square root of 6x plus 49. Next, we'll do the inner terms, multiply those together. So negative 7x multiplied by the square root of 6x plus 49. So minus 7 times the square root of 6x plus 49. And we'll finish up by multiplying the last terms together. So the negative 7 multiplied by the positive 7 makes negative 49 overall. The denominator I'm not going to multiply out. I'm going to leave it as x multiplied by that conjugate, the square root of 6x plus 49, with the plus 7. Next, let's think about how can we simplify that numerator. Well, one thing I notice is we're both adding 49 and subtracting 49. So those will reduce down and make a 0. We're also, in this case, adding 7 square root of 6x plus 49 and subtracting 7 times the square root of 6x plus 49. So we can combine those like radicals together as well. All right, so let's see what remains. We still have that limit as x approaches 0 is coming along. In our numerator, we're going to be left with 6x didn't get canceled out or reduced. We still, in our denominator, have x and that square root of 6x plus 49 plus 7. All right, at this point, you may notice that we have an x multiplied by the entire numerator and an x multiplied by the entire denominator. So in this case, we can reduce this to lowest terms by eliminating that x over x, which makes a 1. Copying down what remains, you may notice we still have a 6 in our numerator, And we still have what was in the parentheses, the square root of 6x plus 49, and the plus 7 in our denominator. At this point, we've kind of eliminated the problem. The problem was x multiplied by the entire denominator and x multiplied by the entire numerator. So again, we're going to evaluate this as x approaches 0. We're going to fill that 0 in for our remaining x. So this will look like 6 times 0 plus 49 underneath that square root plus 7, which will further reduce, and we can say it's 6 times the square root of 49 plus 7. All right, 6 times 0 to make 0 plus 49, which gets us to 6 over 7 plus 7, which will eventually get us to 6 over 14. So that's a great place to end on this. We got to 6 over 14. That's going to be our limit evaluated completely. All right, hope this helps out. Take your time. If you have square roots, be looking for a conjugate. In our case, we only had a square root in the numerator. If we had a square root in both the numerator and denominator, I would focus on the square root in the conjugate of the denominator first. Hope this helps out. Good luck as you're working on limits.